AI shouldn't be artificial intelligence. I like to think of it as augmented intelligence. What we are trying to do with AI is enhance the opinions, the wisdom, the experience of those on the ground that know things that the AI wouldn't.
The biggest challenge would be not just creating more clean energy, it would be actually using it in a much more smarter way.
My personal motto is that every kilowatt counts for our customers, so that's my mission.
This let's go change the industry attitude is exactly the feeling that we need to keep the lights on, the feeling that we can do better, the feeling that this industry sometimes seems to me like it's stuck in the 20th century and we can pull it and bring it to the 21st century. And by doing that, improve all of our lives.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special project from Energy Central, the 2025 Innovation Awards, a moment to celebrate forward thinkers, risk takers, and the big ideas kind of people who are building the future of the energy industry. I'm Kinsey Grant Baker, head of content at Energy Central. And over the last several weeks, I've had the pleasure of speaking with tons of innovative energy leaders as part of this project, where you, our Energy Central community, have nominated a record number of innovators for this year's awards. From startup founders with audacious ideas to career utility pros with unbelievable resumes. Seeing how many people all of you took the time to write about gave me such hope for the future of this industry. We're in a moment of unprecedented change, but one constant remains. Smart people who think about where we are and where we're going are giving us a shot at a better future. In looking back on these conversations I've gotten to have with nominees and winners, I see a clear through line. Innovation requires dedication, hard work, and more than just good luck and a good idea. It's blood, sweat, and tears type of stuff, and it's inspiring to hear about from the people who will it into existence for the good of the grid, the climate, the world, and you and me. Today, we're going to hear from truly innovative and thoughtful people about what went into their game-changing work, from theory to practice and beyond. I asked them all pretty similar questions. What do you do? Why do you do it? What inspired you? But also, where do we go from here? How does innovation change? What does the next generation of innovative power professionals have to look forward to? I hope you enjoyed these quick snippets with our 4 tremendously talented winners of this year's Energy Central Innovation Awards. You'll hear from Yuval Lubowich, CTO and co-founder of HData, Stephanie Gossman, manager of grid transformation for Georgia Power, Pranav Gupta, manager of data science at ICF, and David Sypnieski, CEO and founder of Athena Intelligence. Their big ideas, thoughtful answers, and commitment to building for the future are inspiring. Congratulations to these winners and to everybody who was nominated. We are so grateful that you are part of the Energy Central community. Now, let's roll the tape. I would love to start with a very basic question. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell our audience of utility and power professionals who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Yuval Lubowich. I'm the co-founder and CTO at HData. And what I worry most about and play with are technologies. In HData, we operate in the regulated energy segment. We deal with regulators and regulatees. And our belief and understanding of this market is that regulatory energy data is painful and inefficient to both navigate and manage. And what we do at HData and what me and my team do at HData is figure out creative ways, leveraging technology to ease the pain for all of us.
I imagine that right now is certainly a turbulent or volatile time for regulation as it pertains to specifically U.S. utilities. I'm just kind of curious, generally speaking, do you feel that way?
Oh yes. I mean, regardless of how you think about the new administration, we have seen recently a lot of changes, and there's a lot of underlying currents that we're tracking. And while the current trends favor compliance and automation, and potentially even some policies reversals that are happening, we still see that we encounter and see a lot of demand that is actually intensifying, because what's happening is that a lot of our customers and even other companies in this segment, they need to understand what's happening. All of these changes are causing a lot of fear, and somebody needs to help them figure things out.
So I would love to hear more about how you got started. Can you tell me a little bit about, why you do it? What inspired you to start with HData, and what keeps you inspired today?
I can say that it was or point to a single person or a single company that inspired me to do what I do here at HData. If I had to sum it all up, I would say that I'm a builder, I'm an engineer, I'm a product manager. I love bringing these things together, both the technology and the product aspects of how things operate and what one can do with technology. And I love pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And by pushing these boundaries, actually help others leverage new capabilities and new technologies that are out there. Not everyone is fortunate enough to be working in a tech company that can push and innovate, but I still think that a lot of capabilities are being missed out because people don't necessarily have access to technology. And so my personal passion is to get technology in the hands of other people, and by doing that, make a dent. Hopefully make a big dent, but yeah, that's what I'm in it for.
Who would you say is your sort of core customer?
At HData, our core customers are both the regulated entities, energy companies, and the regulators. And there are quite a few others that look at this industry, from private equity firms to consumer advocates, and so on and so forth. And so we think of ourselves as playing in this, in the middle of this ecosystem, helping both the regulated and the regulators figure things out, get a better understanding of what's happening in the markets, very quickly access data and understand trends and things that are happening and changing in this industry.
And why would you say that this part of the industry is in need of innovation in the first place? We're here to talk about innovation. I'm curious why this was where you saw the most opportunity.
So there are so many challenges in our industry that it was almost like a no-brainer. The processes that we've encountered before starting HData were that everything was highly manual. Getting at the data, finding relevant data, understanding the data was highly manual. It was overwhelming, if you will, because there's so much of it. The number of regulations, the changes, the historical information, so overwhelming. It's literally finding needles in haystacks. This actually led to limited visibility. You can't understand everything that's happening in the industry. You can't understand what needs to happen and when, and how do you stack and rank against others. There's lack of governance, meaning information is scattered across multiple data sources, and you can't go to one location to find everything that you need. A lot of times it's time sensitive. I need to figure things out within a couple of days. And as I said, so much data, so much information scattered, it takes time. And this is expensive. Like throwing people at the problem was expensive. And to us, that was the root cause of building HData and getting it off the ground. We wanted to change everything.
And in the spirit of changing everything, I'm curious to hear where you see this part of the sector broadly, and more specifically your work, going in the future. What's on deck? What are you expecting in the coming weeks and months and years?
Yeah, I think that the exact flip side of all of the challenges is where we're heading. We want to bring more visibility into this segment. We want to empower our customers, whether they are the regulated entities and the energy companies or the regulators, to accelerate insights, to be able to faster understand what's happening and when it's happening. We want to help them save time and money, because ultimately all of us are the customers of these utilities. If a utility can run more efficiently, these costs will ultimately be reflected to us, the customers, the consumers. So we want to save time and money, and we want to mitigate risk. A lot of the challenges that these companies encounter, whether it's by changing regulations and adhering to them, or figuring out where to build the next power plant and how do we mitigate spiraling electricity demand, all of these things are being helped by what we do here at HData, and I believe that ultimately it helps all of us as consumers.
Yeah, certainly. Very interesting to hear. So last question for you today. What is something, not necessarily your work, that excites you about working in energy more broadly?
I think that energy in general, this is a critical infrastructure for all of us, and we take it for granted. We are all used to flipping a switch and the light turns on, but that's not necessarily always going to remain the case. And as this industry evolves, as what we do becomes more and more challenging because of the various political forces or technological advances, what inspires me, what brings me every day to work with a smile and this let's go change the industry attitude is exactly the feeling that we need to keep the lights on, the feeling that we can do better, and the feeling that this industry sometimes seems to me like it's stuck in the 20th century and we can pull it and bring it to the 21st century. And by doing that, improve all of our lives. So that's the thing that excites me the most.
So I would love if you could start by introducing yourself. Can you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So hi, my name is Pranav Gupta. I'm a technical product manager at ICF, working on a tool called Sightline, which is a demand-side management platform for utilities. As a technical product manager, I'm doing the product management, creating the product development roadmaps, and at the same time overseeing data science teams, leading software development, and overseeing the cloud infrastructure that we have. There are a lot of services that Sightline provides, but one of the core services that we provide is the creation of digital twins for utilities to create their own and design their customer programs. And by doing that, digital twin is we create a digital twin of every single household in a utility's service territory. And then we model multiple energy efficiency as well as electrification measures on it to see what its impact could be. For example, we can see, okay, what if every home has attic insulation? Or what if every home has heat pumps installed? What could the energy savings look like? What could the cost savings look like? And how could it impact the distribution grid? And we don't really do this at the scale of like maybe 10 to 20 buildings. What we're doing this at the scale of millions. One of the recent projects that we did was for 6 million customers approximately. And we had about 30 to 40 measures that we were simulating. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of digital twins that we're working with. And we do this within a span of like 2 to 3 days because we're leveraging cutting edge data science. We're making use of cloud computing, and increasingly we're using AI.
That's just a ton of data to manage. And from a management perspective, I'm curious about how you keep everything straight. What are some of the challenges with that? And what would you say are some of the best strategies for ensuring that things are kept in order when you're dealing with such a massive volume of data?
I think one of the challenges that we're seeing, I think we're still in the infancy right now of actually taking in all of this data because different utilities, different entities have different standards and formats that the way they use it in. So one of the biggest challenges is getting it in, putting it in the same format, being able to clean it, and then actually use it for the applications that we want to do it. It's definitely taken us time. We've been working on it for quite some time now, but just it's relentless doing it over and over again and perfecting our processes to the point where we're now at like where we can do all of these things within a span of a few days. But no, it wasn't easy. It took a long time.
I can imagine. Could you put into context a little bit why this work is impactful or, innovative? We're here for the Innovation Awards for utilities.
The biggest challenge would be not just creating more clean energy, it would be actually using it in a much more smarter way. Utilities are actually have this AMI data, which is the energy consumption data of millions of customers at like 15-minute interval. Once we can take all of this data, combine it with data of like where customers have participated in previously with what kind of programs, we can look at satellite data to see what kind of buildings they're in, the weather data, the price data, all the different kinds of grid topology data. Once we actually combine all of this, the opportunities are pretty much endless. There's so many more things that we can do. And that's kind of what exactly we're doing. We're creating these novel algorithms. We're creating all of these, leveraging cloud computing, AI, to actually make sure that the customer programs that these utilities create are much more targeted, they're much more effective, and they're much more smart and intelligent.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And it certainly brings to mind where the utility is headed in the future, what a modern utility looks like. I'm curious to hear your perspective on what the future might hold for your specific corner of the energy industry.
I would say there's one or two things that I can definitely say that's like real-time grid optimization and pretty much hyper personalization. So I'm hoping that over the next few years, there's going to be more AI, more ML models that come in that can adjust the demand specifically based on customer preferences. And there's a lot of applications that can happen over here. One of the things that we're working on at ICF is just making much more intelligent DR programs, demand response programs. So a traditional DR program is basically like a 4-hour program, 4-hour event with 4-degree offsets dispatched to all the customers. However, what we're doing is we're actually looking at our customer base and figuring out, okay, which customers can handle the event for how long. Let's say we have a customer A that can handle the event for 30 minutes and then they decide to opt out because they're getting too hot or too cold. Customer B, they can do it for 2 hours. So we actually take a look at the telemetry data that comes in from these customers' homes and then optimize at a real-time basis so that when we dispatch an event, it doesn't necessarily need to be for 4 hours. For customer A, it can be 30 minutes DR event. For customer B, it can be 2-hour event. And in that way, I think it's a win-win situation. Utilities get to meet their objectives of lowering the demand, reducing snapback, and at the same time, customers can participate in the DR programs without being uncomfortable. So it's a win-win situation, and that's where I see the future.
Yeah, I think a future with more and more win-win situations is certainly one that sounds good to me. I imagine sounds good to everybody listening to this as well. So I would love to speak a little bit more about, your background specifically. Can you tell me more about your journey in this industry? What inspired you to get into the energy space in the first place? What is inspiring to you today? What feels innovative? What are you excited by with the work that you're doing?
Sure, yeah. I actually got into this field by accident. My background is in computer science. That's what I did my undergrad in. And for me, clean energy at that time meant just installing a solar panel on the roof and calling it a day. All the issues would be solved. But fortunately, I got an internship at Berkeley Lab, and that's where I really got exposed to the energy systems, the bigger ideas, grid management, EM&V, the demand side solutions that we're working with. And I got hooked. I personally enjoyed it so much. And most importantly, I saw the role that software systems can play in this energy transition, which I had absolutely no clue about. So that's what really got me interested. And then I decided that I'll do a dual master's in computer science and energy systems. That once again opened my mind to so many different endless opportunities. Since then, I've been here at ICF working on this product, and it's been amazing. We're actually getting to create all of these new features, and the scale of the data which we're dealing with and the savings that we're providing to these utilities and making sure that it's resilient is it's actually having a real life impact. And that's what's keeping me going forward, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds really, really compelling. I think one of the interesting things that I have learned in my time in the energy space is this idea that, we've got sort of the younger cohort and the older cohort, and these are like more seasoned professionals versus more computer savvy, tech focused professionals. And I think it's really cool to hear more about your work that bridges these gaps, right? That helps these utilities that have existed in a certain way for a very long time to better understand their consumer, to better understand the opportunities that lie ahead for them. It's very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Every single day I wake up, I see so many different new applications going around, people across the world, like cities, states, governments, nations. And one of the great aspects about this is in the energy is not only through tech, you have breakthroughs in research, you have policy, finance, then you also have customer behavior. Everyone's tackling this energy transition in so many different ways that every day is just, you're learning something new. At least I am.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm right there with you. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love if you could start by just introducing yourself. Can you tell the audience listening in who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kenzie, for having me. Thank you for the opportunity too. I'm Stephanie Gossman, Georgia Power Company, and I lead grid transformation strategy. So what that means, it includes innovation opportunities everywhere from behind the meter to up to transmission scale opportunities, including policies, partnerships, and funding opportunities that support that strategy. My personal motto is that every kilowatt counts for our customers. So that's my mission.
We talk about grid transformation strategy. Those are definitely some key buzzwords for a lot of people who are listening to this, something that I'm sure they are thinking about constantly in their own jobs, their own day-to-day as well. I would love to hear a little bit more about why, you think this is a space that is in need of innovation. You can tell me a little bit more about how that transformation needs innovative thinkers like you and your team to really reach its full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. It is big. It's broad, right? I mentioned behind the meter, up through transmission. There's a lot to consider there. So keeping with that theme that every kilowatt counts, you can certainly apply that and scale that anywhere on our grid. The opportunity is the same, though, no matter where you're looking. If it's distribution or behind the meter or transmission, there's many different types of technologies that interact with our grid, and they impact the reliability and the ability to serve our customers efficiently. So I think that we have great opportunities to continue to leverage our grid connected devices. Examples include the ability to create capacity through optimized use of distributed energy resources, or DERs, via a DERMS, a distributed energy resource management system. That's one area of responsibility that I love to focus on. Also, there's the potential for informing our real-time operations decisions through deployment of new devices such as grid enhancing technology, specifically dynamic line ratings, or DLR, on our transmission grid. Again, trying to make sure that we're optimizing those resources that are already out there, whether it's maybe customer-owned smart thermostats, for example, or solar panels, or transmission assets, lines that are already in service on the grid.
When I look back at, the collection of Power Perspectives episodes that we've had over the last 6 months or a year, the things that people are talking about on Energy Central, you're really hitting on a lot of the topics that matter most to them when they think about the future of the grid, the future of their jobs, of energy more broadly speaking. Do you have any examples more specifically of, partnerships or projects or anything that you want to highlight that you feel really brought some of these big picture technological innovations to life in a real world way?
Sure. So I think I'll just use the dynamic line rating, DLR example that I mentioned just a moment ago. So our partner there, our implementation partner, is Line Vision. And we are very excited to partner with Line Vision. Of course, they are well known in the industry in this space. They're one of many DLR providers out there, but we're excited about their technology and seek to leverage that on the Georgia Power system so that we can learn more about what DLR can bring and inform new business policies, practices, things of that nature, to hopefully lead to, again, a more efficient grid operation overall.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your perspective on where we're going in the future in the energy sector. What do you think our listeners should be on the lookout for as we move into, next year, next month, and even beyond that?
Absolutely. So that's a big question, right? And I'll do my best to answer it, but it's exciting, right? We're in an exciting industry and an exciting time. And we talk about my role as grid transformation focused because it is. It's transformative anywhere you look on the grid. So I personally am most excited about the intersection of customers and the grid and how that relationship continues to evolve. So customers are installing devices, for example, right? I mentioned some of those behind the meter distributed energy resources. They're installing them in their homes, their businesses, and those devices can, of course, both benefit their day-to-day operations personally or professionally and how they use power, but it can also be potentially leveraged to help benefit and optimize real-time grid operations, which is beneficial potentially to all customers connected to that same grid. So this change will continue to occur across all customer classes, both on the supply side and the demand side solutions is what we're seeing. And I think there's greater potential for both. So electric utilities, I mentioned, we have an exciting opportunity to work with our customers, both to ensure that we have the processes, capabilities, and I would say most importantly, the customer engagement models that allow us to work through these changes in the most beneficial way for, again, those customers' benefits that participate, as well as all customers who are connected to the grid.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up, Stephanie. I will admit, behind the scenes here. We're recording this the week after I just got back from Distributech in Dallas with several members of our team. And so many of our conversations at Distributech focused on customer engagement and the role of the customer in how strategic planning happens, how we solve some of these major challenges for the grid this year, next year, and well beyond that as well. We're facing some really significant challenges. I think it's really interesting to consider how we can figure out solutions that can be mutually beneficial for both the customer and for the people who are keeping their power on. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, a lot of cool and interesting and smart people doing great work there as well.
Absolutely. We like to talk about, especially a DERMS implementation as an enabler for us to be able to leverage these devices. And we like to talk about our strategy there is really crawl, walk, run, right? This is totally, I'm going to keep using the word transformative for not just our company, right? But the overall industry. And I say industry very broadly, not just utilities, but again, customers too, right? We have got to work at this one step at a time, and we will do it together. And it will be an iterative process in particular, but I think it has great potential for a lot of different reasons. And so we can't even, we're just scratching the surface. We can't even define all those scenarios and use cases, I think, right now. But we're working on it, and we got to start somewhere. So that's where we are today. And I'm excited about the potential too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to highlight the opportunity that we're just scratching the surface on in the Innovation Awards is exactly what we want to be doing here with this project. So that's awesome. And finally, Stephanie, before I let you go today, I would love to just hear a little bit more too about what inspired you to get into this line of work.
Well, I'll give just a quick history and how I got started in the industry, because that leads to just what that inspiration was. So I began working in the power industry, and I've only worked in the power industry in different sectors of our business, but I began working in transmission modeling support, actually, with, transmission conversations we're having. It makes sense. I began on that modeling side right after the Northeast blackout. And so some of the requirements were that we had to expand our models, our transmission models, to meet some of those new NERC requirements so we could see further into our connecting systems with our neighbors. It was in that very first role, though, that I saw how interconnected our industry really is. And I gained an appreciation for the fact that millions, many, many millions of people depend on the reliability of our electric grid. So I still think about that, and I look for ways that I can make impacts either at a large scale on the transmission grid or even small scale. We were just talking about behind the meter, distributed generation, potentially opportunities and resources. And I try to look at how each of those could benefit the customers that we serve, because again, our customers depend on us, and we have both the responsibility and the privilege to serve them in the best way.
I would love if you could tell our audience who you are and what you do.
I am David Sypnieski. I'm the founder and CEO of Athena Intelligence. We are a geospatial technology company which is working towards bringing data and analytics that our mission is to take the financial risk out of climate change for the utility and the financial services industries.
Taking the financial risk out of climate change. I would love to hear a little bit more about how you're doing that.
The story of Athena actually begins in agriculture. Agriculture being a massive industrial commercial system that interacts directly with the environment, et cetera. 10 or 15 years ago, these climate change impacts that really had a meaningful impact on your bottom line in operations were really beginning to show themselves. And so at the time, simply put, I began to really appreciate and understand the need for not just scientific data around plant growth, et cetera, but the ability to turn all of that rich data into an operational unit of data, something that you could be used to make commercial decisions around, not just know how plant science works around growing tomatoes or wine grapes, et cetera, but actually using that for contracting decisions, for just to use that data in your operational decision making. Flash forward now, where now all of a sudden climate change is, and I know that may be a loaded word, but how the climate is impacting wildfires, utilities, insurance companies, entire communities. To me, it seems like deja vu. I've dealt with this. There needs to be a new approach to the use of the data that I think right now the impactors of climate change are beginning to really force. It's not the climate change is the problem. The problem is that the data, the process, the tools that we've used are all built for a world that doesn't exist any longer. They leave us in a vulnerable and a reactive position. they're static. And what we've learned, what Athena has done, is learn to take this geospatial technology and turn that data into more of a dynamic, computable, predictive data unit that you can begin to make long-term predictions on costs, actions, just like it was in agriculture. You need to know how to deploy lots of money across dozens of different acres and counties to be able to do your supply contracts. Similar to utilities, how are you going to begin to build out your plans or operational budgets over the coming years to mitigate against this risk? So to Athena, wildfires are just harvest events, and we've been doing it for a long time now.
It sounds almost like a failure to adapt to the reality or the circumstances of the reality that we're currently living in. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind just illustrating or contextualizing a little bit what the costs would be for a utility that might fail to adapt or that might fail to understand the realities of our current climate situation.
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is when you say utilities, I mean, there's different kinds of utilities, both in scale, how they're structured, public, investor owned, et cetera. Our target market is primarily kind of the mid to smaller utilities. Wildfire is not a California thing only, as evidence, right? And so a lot of these kind of smaller, mid-sized utilities in areas that aren't traditionally or have historically been wildfire prone don't have kind of the in-house expertise, the GIS technology, the experience, et cetera, to cope with that. And so the cost of it can be actually devastating. However, they may be smaller and more distributed, but their risks and impact could be just as big as the largest ones out there. If they begin to ignite a fire, I mean, you can see Lahaina and Texas and Colorado, et cetera, their liabilities are just as big, if not bigger, by percentage of their scale. And so they're just as liable as any big organization that could absorb that liability. So the cost is potentially devastating to them. There's already reports where a lot of these organizations are beginning to get downrated in their credit ratings, et cetera, significantly. The way that Athena is approaching the data is that as opposed to just simply an expense to be able to, like an insurance cost to be able to protect against a liability, we're transforming the data to allow it to be an asset, something that can actually improve the value of your operation, your organizations, and provide a benefit to the community in general.
One of the questions that I've been asking our Innovation Award winners this year is, why do you feel that this specific area of the industry was in need of innovation? I think your answer to the question is rather obvious, but I would love to understand a little bit more just about why this innovation is so necessary.
A lot of these legacy industries, agriculture, insurance, utilities, kind of core infrastructure to our civilization, food, energy, right? While they're critical in their infrastructure, they're also very old and legacy, a lot of highly regulated industries, but leaves them vulnerable to kind of the dynamic events that we're seeing through climate change. With advances in computing technology, data science, technology, et cetera, the opportunity is there for old and legacy organizations that are highly regulated and being compelled to change through environment. They're vulnerable because of their legacy, because of the regulations, and all of that is being forced to change. A data-driven change is better than changing by opinions and assumptions.
So with that in mind, I would love to hear a little bit of your perspective on just where you see your industry, your sector, your company, it can really be anything, going in the future. What should the people listening to this conversation be on the lookout for as we move into the coming months, years, and beyond?
To answer that question, I'll make 2 points around that. The first being, there's a lot of talk of AI. AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that. I've been working in ag for a long time, and AI for a while, and these industries, and the way that I'd like to propose the world to look at it is that AI shouldn't be artificial intelligence. I like to think of it as augmented intelligence. That one of the benefits of these old legacy, highly mature industries is that there's an enormous amount of wisdom involved with it. And so I believe what we are trying to do with AI, so to speak, or this data, is to not replace anyone or make any decisions without human involvement, but to enhance the opinions, the wisdom, the experience of those on the ground that know things that the AI wouldn't. I used to describe it as in agriculture, when a farmer walks onto a field and his boot sinks into the soil, he's picking up data that AI doesn't have. But AI can be doing all the other work that the farmer can't do. So I believe that going forward, when we're talking about AI, we don't look at it as an either or, that we look at it as an enhancement. And what is it enhancing? It's enhancing our ability to communicate with the acre or the environment itself. The guiding principle of Athena, we call the technology the voice of the acre, because the intention is that we've always been operating on the acre, but we've never actually talked to the acre and collaborated with it. And so our use of AI is to remove the friction from the acre being able to talk. There's two of us on this window. And if we were making a decision on undergrounding or PSPS or some other decision around a utility infrastructure or resiliency, we should have a third window here and have the acre talking to us as well. And that's kind of Athena's vision in that going forward, what should we be looking out for? Looking out for AI, yes, but looking out for AI in a way that enhances existing wisdom and intelligence. It makes it easier for the earth and us to talk to one another.
Thank you for listening to our very special Innovation Awards episode. I hope you walk away feeling as inspired as I am and ready to commit to change making, big ideas, and even bigger conversations. And while I have you, if innovation is your thing, I would watch this space. Energy Central is about to launch a brand new podcast centered on the innovative ideas and people shaping the future of power. We've got our first episode coming very soon, and you do not want to miss it. So subscribe to this feed and keep an eye out for more from us. Go to energycentral.com to check out all of the Innovation Awards winners for this year and to keep up to date with all of the news, insights, and conversations driving us toward that future that these Innovation Awards winners are building. For Energy Central, I'm Kinsey Grant Baker. Thanks for tuning in.